The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gam Podcast Network is brought to you by Nordic Fantasy. Go up to 325 times your entry with their new Pick 8. Sign up with the promo code SGPN to claim your special pick and a first-time deposit offer up to $50 in bonus cash on Nordic Fantasy, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Get the best data-driven props and picks from Rhythm. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportscampodcast.com/rhythm, sportscampodcast.com/RITHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gam Podcast Network. It is currently Friday night, roughly 10 p.m. Eastern Time on June 14th. I'm Rosso, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Should be a fun episode, bit of a shorter one, as we only have 3 matches to talk about. It is semifinal time in Stuttgart and in Den Bosch. Now, I have to clarify, there are 3 matches to go through because one of the quarterfinal matches did not end yesterday. Got suspended, specifically the Brouwer and Humbert match. So because of that, we are currently a match short. Humbert is down a set, but he's up 5-2 in the second. So they're probably going to head to a third. Means whoever ends up winning that match will probably be at a disadvantage in the semis because they have to play extra tennis on Saturday. Point is, though, we only have 3 lines to actually preview. So we're going to cover the 2 semifinal matchups in Stuttgart and the only matchup in Den Bosch that we have on paper, which is Greek Sport against Korda. Now, before we get into any of the actual recap of the quarterfinals, do want to remind you once again that we do have a lot of great merchandise on the SGPN merch store, so don't forget to check out the Tennis Gambling Podcast merch over there. We have shirts, sweatshirts, and mugs, all high quality, and I recommend you getting yourself something there. Also, a reminder, whether you watch the podcast on YouTube or listen to it on Spotify or Apple, don't forget to rate and review the podcast on Spotify or Apple, and don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube. A reminder, if you do join us on YouTube, it is a live stream. So if you do want to leave some comments, get some thoughts from myself, if you ended up wanting to ask me a question or something, you can hop in and I'll answer your questions. Point is, though, whether you end up watching it on YouTube or listening to it after the fact, you can still show your feedback. So I recommend you doing so. Helps the show out as well, letting me know what I can improve on and how I can make the show better. Either way, now before we get into any of the actual recap, though, I do want to remind you once again that we do have a lot of great college baseball action going on, and Noah Bieniek has been covering it, so check out the college baseball experience over there. Also a reminder that Circa announced that they're giving away $16 million in guaranteed prizes for Survivor and Millions, so Circa Survivor and Circa Millions. Sign up in Vegas and play from anywhere with footballcontestproxy.com. Code SGP to get $50 off. That's footballcontestproxy.com. Promo code SGP. Time to get into the actual recap, though, for the quarterfinals. Overall, the lock and dog picks were decent. Unfortunately, the lock streak did come to an end as we lost. We had the over in the Paul and Korda match at 22.5 games, minus 130. Not even close, as Korda ended up burying Paul in straight sets. Just a bad read in general, based on the head-to-head and based on, I'd say, Korda's tendencies to have long sets. I thought you might be looking at what could have been a marathon. Didn't happen, though, as Paul basically no-showed the entire match. However, made up for it in the dog with the dog as we had de Minaur to win in straight sets against Raonic at plus 110. Basically, the exact script that I had for the actual match ended up unfolding, as I thought that Raonic would be competitive for a set. I thought de Minaur would eventually outlast Raonic in what should have been a pretty long first set. And then I figured without any days off in between, Raonic would eventually run out of gas and de Minaur would run away with it as the match went on. Exactly what happened. Ended up being 7-5 in the first set to de Minaur. Then Raonic immediately got broken in the second set, got broken again, and he lost the second set 6-2. So called that match basically to a T. Nothing against Raonic, but when you aren't exactly, I'd say, used to playing matches in consecutive days, and then you're against the number 1 seed in the tournament, it's probably not a good spot for you. And Raonic started off okay, but unfortunately ended up falling apart as the match went on due to fatigue. So nice winner there with the dog. Overall, once again, decent episode, nothing amazing, but we'll take it and we'll look for a sweep here for the Saturday matches. Now, before we get into any of the previews for the semifinal matchups, do want to recap what happened in the quarters. Also, thank you, Ello. Shout out to all my listeners from Australia. Appreciate it that you have been listening to the show. And hopefully you cash with de Minaur because I backed your home country guy. So hopefully that made the winner even nicer for you. Point is, though, do want to start off with the recap of the quarterfinal matchups. Once again, we are a couple matches short, actually, because you had one match that wasn't finished, which was the Humbert match, which got suspended. You had Struff, who ended up walking over, or I should say he withdrew, which caused Nakashima to advance via walkover as Struff had an illness. Pretty tough break there for Struff, who had 0 break points faced in the entire tournament, and he had to retire, or had to withdraw, which sucks. And then you saw Bublik, who got injured in his match against Musetti, won the first set 6-4, lost second set 6-1, and then ended up losing the break in the start of the third set and ended up quitting. It's even worse for us because we had Struff and Bublik to win the event. So we lost 2 outrights in the quarters via retirement or walkover, which kind of sucks. To get into the actual Den Bosch matches, though, I mentioned Korda, who beat Paul comfortably 6-4, 6-2. Griekspoor I thought would win, but I did call that match correctly, too. I thought Vukic would hang in there, and I did think Vukic was definitely capable of making the match very, very close, and he did. I mentioned Vukic plus 1.5 sets at minus 130. That got there. Mentioned the over 2.5 sets. That got there too. But Griekspoor is still alive with his title defense, and we do have him to win the event. So we do have 1 outright left in Den Bosch. And I mentioned before, de Minaur did beat Raonic in straight sets. As for Stuttgart, there's a reason why I skipped Tiafoe in the outright episode. It's because I don't think he's any good. And Tiafoe ended up losing to Draper. Fun match. Went to a final set breaker, and Draper, I believe, had 30-plus aces in that matchup. But either way, the point is Draper is still a very good player. The issue is always durability with him. But I believe he had 32 aces in that game, or in that match. So Draper looked very good, and he got the job done. And we officially will have a new champion in Stuttgart, as Tiafoe ended up losing. Mentioned that Struff withdrew because of illness, so Nakashima got basically a bye into the semis. You have Berrettini, who ended up winning against Duckworth. We have him to win the event. So hopefully Berrettini can carry us to the finish line. And Musetti, I mentioned before, did advance via retirement against Bublik. So we had a bunch of outrights left, and now we only have 2. We have Griekspoor as our only horse in Den Bosch, and we have Berrettini as our only horse in Stuttgart after both Bublik and Struff ended up getting eliminated. So pretty unlucky for us. Either way, though, point is at least we have somebody in the semis in both tournaments. Hopefully we end up cashing at least one of them, and hopefully both. Either way, though, before we get into the actual lock and dog picks, a reminder that we do have to break down the actual semifinal matchups. So we are only going to go through 3 matchups because we don't have the fourth semi matchup yet because we're waiting for the Humbert results with his match against Brouwer. Before we get into any of that, though, do want to remind you once again, before I forget, that we are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy because the Pick 8 is now live for the NBA Finals, and you can create entries of up to 8 picks. Underdog will automatically double flex your entry, so you can lose twice. You can get 2 things wrong and still end up cashing your bet, which is a pretty cool deal. Cashing your entry, I mean. With more picks to make and more ways to win, the excitement is higher than ever. The best part, you go into 325 times your money, which is definitely a great boost. On top of that, you can use your specials and boost for all flexed entries. And for the Pick 8, you actually will probably survive to have another shot at it, as the Mavericks are currently up 30 against the Celtics. So you're assuming it will not end the sweep, and you probably have Game 5 to use this opportunity once again. But don't forget to use this opportunity before it is gone. Sign up with the promo code SGPN to claim your special pick and a first-time deposit offer up to $50 in bonus cash on a fantasy promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished quickly recapping the quarterfinal matches from Friday. Now it's time to preview the Saturday matches. Starting off with the only match that we have lines for in Den Bosch. We're going to look at a matchup between Korda and Griekspoor. Korda is the favorite at minus 140. Griekspoor is around plus 120. For the actual spread, you have minus 1 for Korda, plus 1 for Griekspoor. The over-under set at 25. You shop around, though, and probably find a 24.5. For set wagering, you can find the over 2.5 sets at around plus 125. Under 2.5 sets is minus 150. Korda in straight sets is plus 185. Griekspoor in straight sets is plus 275. But to go through the path of both players for the event, Korda's had a much easier road, as Griekspoor's had a couple of marathons, actually, as he ended up having a war against Kecmanovic in the first match. So that was not easy. Every set went to a breaker, and Griekspoor did come back from a set down to win the final 2 sets via breaker. Then he beat McDonald, which was not easy either, as he was down 5-2 in the second set breaker. Came back and won it as he won the match in straight sets. Then he came back from a set down again against Vukic in the quarters as he won in 3 with a tie break in the final set. As for Korda, he's been cruising. He's not dropped a set yet. Beat Schoolkate in straight sets in the first round, beat Nardi in the second round in straight sets, and beat Paul 6-4, 6-2 in the quarters. So overall, Korda's in better form, which is why I do kind of agree with the actual pricing. You could argue 140 is maybe a bit high. Maybe it should be closer to like minus 130. But I think the right guy's favored. I know Korda is a guy that I hate actually trusting because I think that he is extremely weak mentally. But I do think he's in better form, and he is a good grass player, despite the memes of him referring to himself as a contender in Wimbledon a year or two ago, and then he lost to Vesely in the first round, which is still hilarious. Point is, though, Korda is a good grass player, and Griekspoor is a champion. He does have the home crowd advantage, but when you go to 3 sets against Vukic and you go to 3 sets against Kekmanovic, who is really not a good grass player, I am a bit concerned about your overall level right now, and I think Korda, if it is going to be a marathon, has the stamina that might actually determine the match, because we saw Griekspoor play a long match against Vukic, and you saw Korda basically cruise past Paul. Is worth mentioning, by the way, they faced off one time last year in Astana on hard court, and Korda did win that one in 3 sets. So Korda, I think, is the more consistent player in this event, and I do think because of that, he should be favored. Of course, I hope I'm wrong, because we have Griekspoor to win the event, but I do think Korda is a worthy favorite, and I think based on Griekspoor's form in the event, he has not been as dominant as I was hoping he'd be. And even though as an outright bettor, he's still alive in the event, which is all I can really ask for, he has not really done enough to instill confidence in me for him to finish the job off. So I am going to go with Korda to get the job done in this one. Maybe 3 sets. I don't see much value on it, but I think Korda will get the job done. Maybe Korda minus half a game at minus 135. That wouldn't shock me. Griekspoor's had a couple of tie breaks, so maybe he wins one of those, gets broken, and you end up cashing the spread bet instead. Point is, I'm going to lean to Korda. I think he's going to win the match, so that's how I'm going to look at that matchup. And moving on to Stuttgart. By the way, for the actual record, if anyone was curious, I am going to briefly mention my thoughts on the other semifinal matchup that is projected to be, I guess, in Den Bosch. You're looking at de Minaur against either Humbert or Brouwer. I'm just picking de Minaur. I think de Minaur is better than both guys. It's going to be an expensive price. I don't have any details for you because I don't know how long this match is going to be when it finishes. I don't actually know what the line's going to be. I think de Minaur should beat Humbert or Brouwer. So that's kind of my thoughts on the other semifinal matchup that's going to be determined later on Saturday. Moving on to Stuttgart. You have a matchup between Nakashima and Draper. For this one, Draper is a favorite at a decent size, about minus 215. Nakashima's around plus 185. For the spread here, you have Draper minus 2.5, and you have Nakashima plus 2.5. The over-under set at 23.5. For set wagering, over 2.5 sets is plus 145. For straight sets, Draper in straight sets is plus 125. Nakashima in straight sets is plus 350. Now, they faced off one time recently, faced off last year, actually, and you ended up seeing Draper win. It was not easy. It was on hard court in Italy, actually, I believe in a challenger event, and you saw Draper win in 3. Face off, though, in the next gen final in 2022, which is kind of BS because that is first to 4 in sets, not first to 6. So it's kind of like this hybrid format, so I don't know if that actually counts. Point is, though, Draper did win the recent meeting last year on hard court, and I do think that Draper is a solid grass player. Nakashima made a decent run, though, in Wimbledon a couple years ago, but I do think that Draper is in better form. Nakashima really got gifted a phenomenal path to the semis. Faced off against Eubanks in the first round. I know Eubanks is decent on grass, but has been really bad for the last couple months. Then he was supposed to face off against Zverev, who was the number 1 seed in the event. But since Zverev did end up making it to the French Open final, he was exhausted and ended up withdrawing from the event. So that being the case, he got replaced by lucky loser Gasquet. So instead of facing Zverev, Nakashima got Gasquet, who we know is well past his prime, and Nakashima won that one in straight sets. Then he was going to face off against the defending runner-up, who had not been broken in the tournament yet, and Struff got sick and had to quit. So Nakashima has advanced to the semis while facing basically nobody that anyone thought he was going to face besides Eubanks. Eubanks, we know, is not exactly a great player. I've called him overrated since the Wimbledon run last year, and I was 100% right. Point is, though, when you're facing off against Gasquet and nobody, as opposed to Struff and Zverev, I think it's safe to say that Nakashima was not going to be in the semis if both guys did not drop out of the event. And I think Nakashima, because of that, I don't want to say is an unworthy finalist because it's not his fault the two guys dropped out. But I am saying that Nakashima, I'm not going to suddenly think is in great form because he got gifted a bye in the quarterfinals and the number one seed in the event ended up dropping out because of fatigue. So I think Nakashima, don't get me wrong, has been good in the event, but he's had a pretty decent path, pretty easy path. And I do think that Draper will eventually get the job done in this matchup. The issue is trying to find the right bet because I don't mind the minus 2.5 games, but Draper has been involved in a couple of long matches in this event, as he had a pretty competitive match against Offner in the first round, which ended 7-6, 7-6. Then he went to 3 sets against Giron, and then he went to 3 sets against Tiafo. So he's been winning, but has not exactly been dominant in this event. So I think Draper's the better player, and I think that he is, in my opinion, a guy that has serious top 20 upside, where Nakashima, I think, has more, I'd say, top 30, top 40 upside. I think Draper's the better player when both guys are on point. I think Draper's going to win. The value's tricky. I would not mind a team total over 13 for Draper. I know it's minus 130. I could see a breaker or a 7-5. Maybe it goes 3 sets. But I do think Draper's going to win, and I think that he's going to just showcase his solid serve. I don't think anyone expected him to have 30 aces in change against Tiafo in the quarters, and he did. Nakashima's a good server too, but I still question his mental toughness at times, and I feel like Draper, with his ability to prolong rallies, will be able to force unforced errors from Nakashima's racket. So I think eventually he will win some big points by forcing Nakashima into missing, and I think that's going to be the story of the match. So give me Draper to get the job done in this one. I'll lean to the minus 2.5, but not exactly a big fan of the number. Minus 102, though, is a decent price. The over 2.5 sets, though, plus 145 is actually a pretty good price. I'm not saying that he's going to end up covering the spread and sending the match to 3 sets, but I do think that there is value at plus 145 when they faced off last year on a hard court and it ended up going to 3. So I think with that being the case, I'll lean to the over plus the over 2.5 sets at plus 145 as the value play for that one, but I do think Draper is going to win. Moving on to the last match, you have 2 Italians going at it. You have Berrettini taking on Musetti. Berrettini's minus 260. You have Musetti at plus 220. Over under set at 23.5. Berrettini minus 2.5 games and Musetti plus 2.5 games. For the set spread, you have Berrettini minus 1.5 at plus 120. You have Musetti to win a set at minus 150. You have Musetti in straight sets at plus 400. The over 2.5 sets is plus 140. Now, Musetti has actually been very good so far in the event, as he has been involved in a couple of breakers recently, but he's been able to get by. So to go through his matchups, he had a straight set win 7-6, 7-6 against Pericard. He had a 3-set win against Kepfer, where the first 2 sets went to breakers as well. So Musetti going to 4 straight breakers start the event was not what people thought was going to happen, and Musetti kind of settled in after that, as he broke Kepfer to win 6-3 in the final set there, then lost the first set to Bublik, and then Bublik got injured as he won 7 of the last 8 games. So it is pretty tricky to evaluate that quarterfinal win because Bublik was looking sharp, and then he got injured, and then Musetti took advantage of it. So I have a hard time of fully evaluating that matchup. Point is, though, Musetti's been good. Berrettini, though, has gotten stronger as the tournament has gone on, as he had a marathon against Safulin, in a match he probably should have lost in the first round. Then he beat Chapo in straight sets 6-4, 6-4, and then beat Duckworth. A bit fortunate that Shelton ended up losing to Duckworth, but Berrettini did win that one 6-4, 7-5. So I do think Berrettini's looked comfortable. He's won the event multiple times. It's why we took him to win the event again. I think Berrettini's worthy of being the favorite. 260 is a bit high. I think Musetti's good enough to make the match interesting, and Musetti is 1-0 in the head-to-head as they faced off 2 years ago in Naples, and you saw Musetti win that one 7-6, 6-2. It's a bit dated, so I don't know if it actually matters, but Musetti has been solid here. Berrettini, we know the serve's great, but his return of serve can be a bit questionable at times. I think I'm going to lean to Berrettini to win, but I do think you're looking at what should be a pretty entertaining matchup, and I think that Musetti can hang in there. I don't mind the over 2.5 sets at plus 140. I think there might be some value on that. I think Berrettini team total over or Musetti team total over is worth a look. But I don't see one-way traffic here. I think Berrettini and Musetti are going to battle. I think Berrettini is going to win because I just think his serve is going to be too good on this court for Musetti to actually handle. But I do think that for the sake of this matchup, the line seems a bit large to me, especially with Berrettini having his first tournament back post-injury. He's been better as the event's going on, but I do think Musetti has been a solid player in Stuttgart, and I do think that he has elements of his game which can cause Berrettini problems. So I am going to go with the over, give me a competitive matchup. I think Berrettini's going to win, but I do think you're looking at the once again, the two Italians kind of battling it out for a spot in the final. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for the actual preview for the three matches that we're going to talk about for the semifinals on Saturday. Apologies, by the way, that the last two matches were in Stuttgart, and the quarter match was the only one for Denbosch. Forgot to change the banner on the YouTube stream. Either way, though, point is, before we get into the actual lock and dog picks, do want to remind you once again, we are brought to you by Rhythm, because Rhythm gives you great NBA player props, because Rhythm is a prediction and projections app that makes data and analytics and sports betting easier to follow. You're also looking at Rhythm's predictive models that were born from the brains of MIT data scientists and quants with over 3 years of data to help drive you to better AI-backed betting decisions. Prop predictions are paired with trend graphs. You can see for yourself whether or not the projection actually has some value to it, making betting easier for either sports bets or even DFS picks. A reminder that Rhythm does also share their favorite plays from the actual card, whether it involves the NBA or the WNBA. For example, they were big fans of Tatum under for the assists and rebounds in Game 3 after Tatum had a monster Game 2 in both areas, and Rhythm was right. So you can potentially find some value finding contrarian projections that you can bet on for potentially some serious value. From superstars, bench players, Rhythm does have the best player prop lines, all backed by AI data, so you don't have to constantly scroll through sports books, add multiple sites for trends and predictions. A reminder, claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportscampodcast.com/rhythm, sportscampodcast.com/RITHMM. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished previewing the 3 semifinal matchups that we have lines for on Saturday. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks of the matches. Starting off with the lock, I am going to go to the last match that we talked about in Stuttgart. I'm going to go with the team total. I'm going to go with Berrettini, team total over 13 at -130. Couple reasons why I'm going to go with this. First of all, Berrettini has played 7 sets so far in Stuttgart. 4 of them have had at least 12 games. So the point is Berrettini has found himself in a lot of 7-5s or 7-6s. He's usually been on the right side of those. But the point is with 7-5 or 7-6, that definitely is going to help him reach the 13 in this game, or in this match, I mean. To go through the actual sets that I'm referring to, Berrettini has gone to a 7-5 or 7-6 4 times in this event, and he has won those sets 3 out of 4 times. So keep that in mind. Point is, though, I think there should be at least one set with a 7-5 or 7-6, and I do think Berrettini should be able to win at least one set because he's -650 to win a set. So keep that in mind. Plus, Musetti has also been playing a lot of long sets as he's played 7 full sets in Stuttgart. 4 of those 7 ended in tie breaks. So expect to see at least one long set, maybe 2. Berrettini, I think, is going to win. There's a reason why he's -260 on the money line, but I do think that Berrettini's team total is worth a look. A couple ways to get there. Maybe Berrettini wins in straight sets. A 7-6, 6-3, that's a push. You can potentially get straight sets with breakers or 7-5s. That's a win. Or maybe even you get a breaker and it goes 3, or it goes 3 in general, and Berrettini wins or loses, then you're in pretty good shape. So I think there's a couple ways to get there. I think Musetti's going to struggle to actually return Berrettini's serve because everybody's struggled to return it so far in this tournament, which is why Berrettini has won it multiple times. I just think that Berrettini's serve has been borderline unplayable for most of the competition. So give me a Berrettini team total over 13 at -130 as my lock. For my dog, I am going to go with a 2-pick parlay. I'm going to parlay the other 2 matches. Give me Korda money line, parlayed with Draper money line at +155. Korda has not dropped a set yet in the event. He's been very comfortable, especially beating Tommy Paul in straight sets, only dropping 6 games in the process on Friday. You're looking at Korda, though, who ended up beating Greek Sport in the only head-to-head meeting last October on hard court. So he has won the only head-to-head meeting. Mentioned before that Greek Sport has been winning, but he's had a couple of marathon matches against Kekmanovic and a 3-setter against Vukic in the quarters yesterday, or I should say on Friday. Maybe fatigue will play an issue in that match for him. So I think Korda should get the job done. As for Nakashima, he's had a phenomenal, I'd say that he's had an insane amount of luck to make the semis as Zverev and Struff ended up withdrawing. So Nakashima got an easy path, and I think Draper is going to be the toughest opponent he's faced so far in the event. You're looking at Draper, though, who beat Tiafoe, the defending champion, in the quarterfinals. I know Tiafoe is not in great form. Point is, though, Tiafoe has played well here, and Draper was able to beat him with 30-plus aces. I just think Draper's the better grass player. I think Draper's the better player in general, and I do think that Nakashima, despite making it to the semis, was, I think, more lucky than good to make it here, because the best two players in his region ended up not facing off against him because of injury or fatigue. So with that being the case, I think Draper's going to win. I think Cord is going to win. So give me both of the favorites parlayed together at a nice plus money price. So once again, the picks for the show, the lock's going to be on Berrettini, team total over 13 games at minus 130. Dog's going to be on Quarter money line, parlayed with Draper money line at plus 155. That's going to wrap it up for this episode. A reminder that we'll be back once again on Saturday, probably Saturday night, for the final in Stuttgart and Den Bosch. So we're going to preview both those matches, and looking forward to doing so. Until next time, though, find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Find me on the NBA show. Find me on the MLB show. Find me on the WNBA show as well. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.